Hello, everybody. It's June 17th. It's a Wednesday. My name's Kelly Baltzell. I'm the CEO and owner of Beyond Indigo Pets. Because it's Wednesday, that means it's Telemed Day with Dr. Jess Trimble. And just so we know, we did not text each other ahead of time to wear our Love is Power shirts. So we both got on screen and went, oh, hi, look, we're meeting. This is awesome. So we're having fun with that. So welcome, Jess.
Thank you. I always love coming. I was so excited to see you wearing the same shirt today. It's maybe we've been spending too much time together. Is that what's happening? We're getting on the same way.
The closets are getting coordinated from multiple states away, right? All right. So what do you have for us today?
So today we actually have a really interesting survey. I was very excited to see that AVMA released this. I know that they started surveying practices, let's say it was like middle of February. But what they've done is they have interviewed approximately 2,000 practices and have created this interactive dashboard. And they've made it so that practices, of any shape and size can go in and filter so that you can compare how you're doing as a practice to other practices like you. So you can filter by practice size, number of employees, the state you're located in, whether you're rural or urban. And so, there's so many other practices out there that are trying to figure out what is everybody else doing? How is everybody else doing? How are you bringing yourself out of this hole? And so what AVMA has done is they've broken down these results into what operational strategies these practices are using to get through the pandemic, as well as what precautionary measures they're using with their clients to keep their own staff members safe. So some of the interesting points here. Over 84% asked clients to wait in their vehicles. And that's what we're seeing most of the time is this curbside service. So the vast majority did that. But more interesting too is 98% of practices actually did go through with limiting client contact. And that's far more than I actually thought. I assumed that some of these really rural and small town practices might not have been instituting those, but I was really happy to see that. Other interesting bits is that about a third of practices did institute some form of telemedicine, telehealth, or virtual visits during this time. So I'm hoping that we can break this data down more specifically as we continue to get respondents in from this to see if those practices that utilized telehealth had a difference in how their practice is doing as compared to the ones who did not. So on average, it said that the average cash shortfall for April was about $17K, for May was about $23K, for sort of your average practice, which would be like a 2 to 3 doctor, 2 to 3 exam room, about $1 million in revenue practice. And if you calculate that out, so say you lost $17,000 in April. One of the other things that they had noted was that 20% of practices went to emergencies only. They cut out all wellness, really just if it's an emergency, that's the only thing they'll see. So if that 20% of practices had said, we will see emergencies only. However, we'll move all of our wellness and everything else to virtual visits. They would have needed to see approximately 16 to 20 telehealth visits a day, charging approximately $30, which is a pretty cheap telehealth visit, to make up that cash shortfall. And so for these practices that shut down, they really could have made up this revenue had they used their doctors who now weren't being properly utilized in the hospital and instead utilized them remotely to provide virtual visits at even a slightly discounted fee. They could have made up almost $20,000 in that cash shortfall. So I would really encourage you to look through this. There's some very interesting information we can extrapolate out of this. But it also goes into, more specific things like how other practices are making up for their shortfalls with some of the small business loans, what planned activities they're doing, and employers. So if you're curious about it, AVMA, I believe it's part of their e-business section. Go and dive in and see how your practice is doing compared to those other practices. And then hopefully soon we will have the information about the practices that did do telehealth versus those who didn't, to see if they have a difference in those cash shortfalls. So that'll be really fun to see. Sorry, my inner nerd is sharing about the data analysis of some of these statistics, but it should be some pretty cool stuff coming out in the next couple of months to see how this affected us, and then hopefully better prepare us for this imminent second wave that we know that will be coming this winter. And we can move to the tip. So also very interesting, Dr. Vogelsang in the veterinary telehealth community threw out a poll basically asking if you're not utilizing telehealth, why? Because per that AVMA survey, 30% of practices are. So why aren't the other 70%? So in that poll, about half of the respondents said that they were either too busy to utilize telemedicine or just were overwhelmed with how to even set it up. And I understand that completely. It is a huge undertaking to pick a platform and set up your standard operating protocols and really figure out how it clicks into your own workflow. And some of the questions that I keep seeing over and over in that forum is, how can I get my receptionists or my CSRs more involved? Because if your doctors are swamped, sure, it seems like you can't institute telemedicine, but telehealth is really the more important part of this. So telemedicine, diagnosis, treatment, prescription, you can still have a ton of revenue and really build really strong client relationships and a better client base utilizing your CSRs and your receptionists first. And sometimes you don't even need that doctor involved. So most of your CSRs are already really well trained to say, yes, this should come in, or no, this can wait. And so if we can just do a little tweak in your workflow, and I know this flowchart that I put up is super ugly. I just created it to sort of help understand this. But basically, client calls in to ask if this pet needs to come in for these symptoms. The CSR can then refer to whatever app or telehealth platform you want them to use. You can tell them, send an email with pictures and videos and a list of the symptoms, or go to this app. And then if you have, oh my goodness, you've got receptionists at home that are on maternity leave, you've got maybe a doctor that got bit or something, and then they have to be out for a couple of weeks. There's RVTs that I've met, just dozens of them, who after all of these years of picking up dogs, their back is too bad to keep doing it. And so there's all these people in your community that you can utilize if they want to use their brain. And so even if your CSRs are swamped, we can find those alternative people if you just do a little bit of looking, and you can allow them to then be your teletriage. They don't need to diagnose, they don't need to prescribe, they don't need a license to do this. You can really use anyone with good knowledge to ensure that your practice is not too busy for telehealth by utilizing these other people who want to be involved in the profession, but just physically can't because they're at home with their kids, or they've got a bad back. So if we can just train that CSR to refer to this telehealth platform and then train these people to triage, you can then do telehealth without telemedicine. And for most people who say that they are too busy to utilize or too busy to figure it out, I'd encourage you to scrap telemedicine entirely. Forget about it. Just utilize telehealth. And that will make your life so much simpler, and also really take off the plate of the doctors the simple things. The little questions that they don't need to be answering. And so that can make your doctors less busy. It can make, your CSRs or your assistants maybe a little bit more busy, but really balance that in your practice a little bit better. So I would really encourage you to just sort of work out what that workflow is. And if you're interested, reach out to your local VMAs. There's some great Facebook groups, veterinarians and RVTs with chronic diseases, and they're all just chomping to be able to do virtual visits or virtual teletriage. So reach out. They're out there. Help our fellow RVTs and DVMs and get them involved in your practice if you can. And it might really take some workload off of you, as well as help make up for some of that cash shortfall that you're experiencing. So again, I get a little crazy with flowcharts and SOPs. I talk about it every week, but this is how you're going to figure out getting telehealth into your own practice workflow. All right, so the next thing, the fun part,
The fun part. You get to show all your beautiful hiking pictures that you just took.
A few of them. So typically we talk about gardening after this, but yeah, I've been doing a ton of hiking lately, and the wildflowers right now in Colorado are absolutely incredible. So I took these, I think yesterday and the day before. So enjoy a little bit of Columbine and Colorado sunshine there, because it's stunning out there right now.
With the clouds and the blue flowers, whatever those are.
Yeah, oh, this is my total happy place, wandering through these lush green valleys. And we won't have it much longer. It'll get dry and crispy here in about a month, but for now, it's a pretty great place to be.
That has to be a really great place to be, and I bet it smells wonderful.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
Wow, that is a great marketing to self moment that you did there for yourself. Yeah, you're like, yeah, I'm done. I'm out. I don't have to worry about any of this. Yeah, it's awesome. It's really great. Now I want to go because we don't have mountains. See, like Minnesota's perfect, except the Rocky Mountains aren't here. So if we could like throw a Rocky Mountain range in, I'd be good. Because then
you have 10,000 lakes, though.
We do have 10,000 lakes. Plus, the 10,000 was only because somebody somewhere decided to qualify as a lake in Minnesota. It had to be so many square acres of water surface. So that doesn't mean that's actually 10,000 bodies of water. That means there's 10,000 bodies of water at a certain size.
Interesting. I had no idea.
Yeah. So, and then the Minnesota too is a town just north of me is called St. Cloud. Is where the granite shelf starts. So when the ice ages melted and the glaciers started to go back, that's when a lot of the lakes formed. But south of the granite shelf, there's a lot less lakes. North of the granite shelf, there's a lot more. Yeah, so we do. We have wonderful, amazing things here in Minnesota. But since I was born out in the Rocky Mountains, a little piece of home for me is when I go back. So thank you for sharing.
Oh, my pleasure. I've got plenty more. I'll send some more to you.
Oh, great. And then next week you're going solo. I'll be gone. So next week Jess will be here and I'll be out and she'll be giving us the latest updates. So thanks.
Sorry guys, you're just stuck with me next week.
That's right. Ellie's out. All right. Thanks so much, Jess.
We'll see you next week.
Okay. Bye.